Canberra now and catch up with Labor's Senator Kimberley Kitching, who's joining us now. Thanks for joining us, Senator. Appreciate your time.
How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And I'm keen to talk about this relationship between Australia and China. Both sides of politics, both major parties having a bit of internal consternation about how to deal with it. Why don't you just set the framework yourself for me? Tell me where you think we are with this relationship and what needs to be said and done in our public debate when it comes to China.
Well, I think the primary point, Chris, is that we, as your guest who was just on, Oliver, said, we're very lucky to live in a democracy. So we are very lucky to live in a liberal democracy where rights are protected. We have the rule of law, freedom of the press, the rights of minorities are protected. And I think that is a system that we must protect and promote. And I think that what we're seeing is really quite in-depth discussion in Parliament House amongst parliamentarians, and I think that that's actually very healthy. Obviously, we have a trading relationship with China that's very successful, but we also have our system, our democratic system that we should protect. And I think that's where the debate, and we're also in an alliance with the United States. And as we know, there's a great deal of tension between the United States and China on trade, particularly, and really also on intellectual property and the protection of intellectual property in the United States. That's a concern that a lot of Congress and the Senate in America does have. And I think that we're sort of seeing those tensions play out. But I don't think that's an unhealthy thing, and I certainly wouldn't condemn a variety of views because one of the things that makes our system so great is that we, of course, do allow for a variety of views, which authoritarian regimes don't really allow.
Yeah, well, the point, though, is that if you want to protect your freedom and democracy, you've got to be prepared to always talk about it, always look out for threats to it, and always defend it. And aren't the people of Hong Kong experiencing that right now? Your colleague, Senator Kim Carr, seems to come from the other point of view. He seems to think the people in the Labor Party are too critical of China, a Cold War mentality, he calls it, and we ought to ease off.
Well, I don't think the Cold War analogy is really successful. I think that because it's very different from the Eastern Bloc that we saw in that period where essentially economies weren't integrated. But I think that we do have to protect our system. It is our system that gives us the right to be able to speak on these issues. It's our system that allows minorities to have rights. It's our system that allows the certainty of the rule of law. So I think, and in that edition of Toxin magazine, which is the magazine of the John Curtin Research Centre, which is a moderate Labor think tank out of Melbourne, that issue canvassed a great deal of different issues with China. It was certainly China-themed. I wrote about democratic rights in Hong Kong, and Kim wrote about research and development. Gareth Evans gave a piece. Michael Danby talked about Huawei. These are, there's a wide variety of issues that we need to deal with, and I think also a variety of views. But my view is that our system, we are very lucky to have our system, and we should do what we need to do to protect it.
Yeah, I don't think we should be afraid to say that it's a much better system than China's. Now, Kimberley Kitching, when you have...
Can I just add something?
Sure.
Oh, I just wanted to add something to that, Chris, because, of course, one of the issues I think we do have is the Lowy Institute a couple of years ago did a survey, and young people didn't necessarily conclude that democracy was necessarily the best system. And that's why I think it's actually... parliamentarians are beholden to actually say that our system is the best system.
Yeah, that's not cultural
that's a real
imperialism,
concern.
That's just fact. The trouble is young people didn't live through the Cold War. They didn't see the wall come down. and they don't understand these things. This is why people should talk about it. I need to ask you, though, given what we've seen with Sam Dastyari spruiking Chinese foreign policy, with cash donations at the New South Wales Labor headquarters, even some of the, let's say, pro-Beijing or gentle on Beijing lines we've seen from people like former Foreign Minister Bob Carr, are you concerned that there are too many people in your own party, in the Australian Labor Party, who are too keen to appease Beijing?
Well, I would say to you, Chris, what I will say, Chris, is that there are certainly a lot of people in the Labor Party who are very concerned about authoritarian regimes. Remember, in Melbourne particularly, there's a large Jewish population. A lot of those Jewish people are Russian Jews. They came to Australia to escape an authoritarian regime which was also anti-Semitic. And there are a lot of them who are members of the Labor Party. So they are anti-communist, authoritarian regimes. So they still hold those views. So not just amongst people who are in the representative class in politics, but amongst members of the Labor Party, there is a view that authoritarian regimes should be, that we must stand against those kinds of regimes, and these people are speaking from their own personal experience and their family's experience. So I think that within the Labor Party, I think there's a lot of very sensible people who know what those regimes do to people's personal lives on a daily basis.
And
so
you
I would
should
say
speak
to you,
truth to Beijing.
Don't give up.
You don't give up hope, but you're saying that people in the Labor Party who believe that you should speak truth to an authoritarian regime like Beijing, even if you have to pay a diplomatic or economic price?
I think there are people in the ALP who absolutely do think that. They are talking from their own personal experience. So really, if you go to, not that I'm suggesting you would ever go to an ALP branch meeting, Chris, but
if maybe
they invited me to
speak,
should invite you.
I'm there. They invite me to speak, well, Kimberley, I'm there.
I might organise that. But I think if you went, you would see that there are people who will tell you that they would fight with their last breath against an authoritarian regime.
Well, that is comforting.
And remember, it was the Labor Party. Yeah, there was the Labor Party who encouraged, people from Vietnam as well.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's not just, the Eastern Bloc, it's also more newly arrived Australians. So I think you do see that people will talk about this. Obviously, people who are members of political parties are, very engaged in these issues and engaged in the issue of democracy.
I appreciate that, Kimberley Kitching. Thanks very much for sharing those thoughts.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing you at a branch meeting.